I'm Brian Briscoe, host of the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. And this podcast is different than everything else out there. I bring together a new and an experienced investor on each episode, and I let the aspiring investor ask the questions that they need answered. So if you're an aspiring investor yourself, you probably will have the exact same questions. Now, before we get to this episode, make sure you hit the subscribe button below and that little bell to make sure you get notified every time we post a new episode. And now, enjoy the show. We got Deepa on the line. What do you want to ask her?
How do you go about finding your team members or your partners or sponsors?
I would say you'd have to know how to vet a person. And, it's just like conversation that we are having right now is asking questions. You'd have to ask about tell me about a deal that did not go as well or that's struggling. And you want to see how if the person answers that question, and everybody has a property that struggles. It's a relationship game. So you want to vet the person first. You also want to ask about, hey, when something went wrong, how did you communicate with your investors? Is there a communication plan? You want to find out how they deal with adversity, and just ask questions and vet people and invest. Start as an LP.
Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. I'm very excited for today's show. I'm always excited, but I think we got two really, really great people on the line with us today. We got Deepa Akula and we got Kyle Briggs. And as is custom, Deepa, you're up first. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah,
I'm so honored to be here.
Yeah. And Kyle, welcome to you too. We'll just talk to you a lot more later, but happy to have you as well.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So Deepa, do us a favor and tell us about yourself. Tell us, where you were and what got you into multifamily.
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. It's very accidental and it was all by chance. So I was a head of engineering. By training, I'm a mechanical and aerospace engineer, got a master's from University of Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
But when I graduated, I found out all my research was for Boeing. And I found out Boeing was not hiring foreign-born engineers. So I had to pivot into civil engineering.
Yep.
And I'm a licensed professional civil structural engineer and was managing a group of engineers and having fun. And I was tired of not having a way to invest our savings. And my husband and I, both engineers, and we had some savings, and I knew it was not good to have money in the bank.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what got me started on the journey of looking for investments and looked for single family homes, and I'm in Seattle, so nothing really penciled out here. And long story, just stumbled into apartments. Went to an investor meeting in Seattle, and there was a gentleman talking about his holdings in multifamily, and that kind of got me started. And he was not syndicating, but I learned more and more and found about syndications and started as an LP. So pretty much by necessity is how I stumbled into multifamily.
So yeah, you're looking for a place to invest. You wanted something, place to park, your savings and whatnot. Now, the meetup you went to, was it a general investing meetup, a general real estate meetup? What kind of flavor was it?
It was a real estate meetup. I think it was Seattle's real estate investor club. It was an investor club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, I live in Idaho Falls right now. And one thing that I miss about the bigger cities is how many, meetups, the physical meetups that there were. And I'm sure Seattle's no different than DC, where I just moved from. But well, good enough. And so you invested passively first. How did you get in contact with the deal sponsor?
So that was one of my friends made an introduction. I knew I wanted to be an investor on syndications. And as you know, Brian, 506B, we need to know somebody to get into their deals. So I was just telling people, I need somebody, I need my person to be in one of these deals. And one of my friends just introduced me to a sponsor and said, I'm not vouching for this person because I never invested with them, but
Mhm.
she's doing what you want to be, or at least the sponsor, she's a
Mhm.
sponsor.
Yep.
So yeah, and I spoke to her and we connected. She's an engineer as well.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's how I found my first sponsor.
Awesome. Awesome. So just from a referral from a friend.
Recommendation, yes.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I found, a couple of sponsors, a couple of people that I've ended up investing with through the same way. And, friend referrals are a great way to go. So you started investing as an LP. Let's proceed on from there and, walk us through how you got into the GP side later on.
Right. So I invested in my very first syndication about 2019, and I wanted to be a GP because I knew how the numbers worked and just
Mhm.
from my engineering background. And I was part of another syndication as an LP. I just wanted to learn as much as I can. This was with
Mhm.
another sponsor group. So by 2020, I was in two deals as an LP, and
Mhm.
I've been telling both the sponsor groups that I wanted to be a GP, which is why I'm doing this, because I wanted to
Mhm.
be on the other side of the fence first and know what LPs go through so that when I'm on the GP side, I know what they're expecting, what they're going through to
Mhm.
walk them through. And I got a call from one of the GPs, and I tried everything. Um, I tried pro bonoing my engineering skills because I can read through drawings and
Yep.
do analysis, and but you know what? You have to give everything you got.
Mhm.
You have to know what you have in the first place
Yeah.
and offer it and see if you can get your way into a sponsorship
Mhm.
group. So yeah, and I got a call saying, "Hey Deepa, I know you want to be a GP." And this was after 2 years
Mhm.
of constantly telling people that I wouldn't tell anybody because I don't want to work with anybody, but just the two sponsor groups that I
Yeah.
invested my money with, risked my money with. And finally, I got a call when they have a need for
Mhm.
the skills that you've been trying to help them with, get a call.
Mhm.
And that's how I got my first GP spot.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, which of your many skills were they looking for in this particular deal?
So, capital raising was
Okay.
the very first one. They needed equity. And the
Mhm.
second one, which I'm not doing anymore for that particular group, is writing investor reports.
Mhm.
And the group got really big. And now we have an asset manager that
Mhm.
does all the investor reports. But in the very beginning, that was one of the other job
Okay.
titles or requirements was writing investor reports.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. So that's nice. And I think we'll talk about that deal a little later. Actually, you know what? Let's talk about that deal right now. Because I always ask the questions about, one of the deals or projects, but let's go into a little more detail on that particular deal. Tell us a little bit about the deal and how it worked out for you.
Yeah, sure. So the very first deal, um, I want to talk about my LP deal, the very
Mhm.
first one
Let's do that.
where it was an LP, um, and because that one went full cycle. But I want to jump to the other one, GP one, really fast. The very first deal, um, I invested the bare minimum, because I just
Mhm.
have to try out and at least have a proof of concept that this
Most
thing
people
works,
do.
right?
Yeah.
So I went in with 50, and within 2 years and a quarter, so it's 2 years and 3 months,
Mhm.
we made 40% IRR on that deal.
Nice.
It went full cycle. But the first GP deal, talking about how I think most of the listeners would benefit from trying how to become a GP if
Mhm.
that's what you intend to, is you definitely have to know what you have to offer. All of us have something to offer,
Mhm.
and know what you're good at. And also, one of the things to audit is what you do in your free time to decompress.
Mhm.
So if you are scrolling through real estate listings to
Mhm.
decompress, I say that because that's what I did. I
I did
knew.
too. Yep.
So I work hard like 8 to 5 or sometimes even more.
Mhm.
Um, as an engineer, and I'm looking at numbers. I'm just cross-eyed by the time I'm done with the day.
Yeah.
And after that, I'm browsing through real estate listings to
Mhm.
decompress. So that's how I knew that I really, if whatever I do to decompress is how would life be if that's my real job, then
Yeah.
it really would not feel like working ever. So find out what to do a time audit,
Mhm.
and keep score of like how you spend your time. Don't do anything different. We don't want to do anything different. We just want to keep notes on what we do
Mhm.
and what we enjoy the most, and try to pivot and find something that aligns.
Mhm.
So I am a content creator. I like writing, which is why I prefer to write investor reports.
Mhm.
And that is what I offered is, hey, if I am on the group, I could write the investor reports. Or I like talking to people. I love talking to people and explaining how the numbers work. That's just my engineering side of it. So I knew I'd be good with investor relations. So which
Yeah.
is why I chose capital raising as one of the other paths. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Now, question about that. I mean, a lot of people struggle with their first capital raise. There's lots of reasons for it. How did your first experience with capital raising go?
So I was very naive enough to not even know capital raising was a thing. But because I had started as an LP, me and my husband would throw parties pretty much every weekend. Since
Mhm.
we bought our house, now that we have a pad to throw parties on, just
Right.
just, just dinner parties,
Mhm.
to friends and family. So not and that we did purely for fun.
Mhm.
And w without even knowing, we were talking to our friends about what we did completely organically, not on purpose, and because I didn't even know that was a thing, capital raising was a thing. So all our friends and family, most of people here in Seattle, they're all either working for Amazon, Microsoft,
Mhm.
um, Disney, like my husband does.
Yeah.
So we just had people just like us, high net worth individuals, or at least individuals who um, are high income earners.
Mhm.
And we all needed a place to park our money. So they all pretty much had the same problem we had. And without even knowing that, I was just talking about what we were doing. That's how we kind of spread the word.
Yeah.
And when I was doing my first raise, the groundwork was already done, pretty
Yeah. I think
much,
I think
not
that's
on
that's
purpose.
well. I think you did everything inadvertently. I mean, you did everything right. You built the relationships with people, and a lot of this business is 100% relationships. And you did it in a very non-threatening way. You introduced them to the passive investing in a very non-threatening way. And part of what and we've talked a lot, and I kind of knew this story before I asked you about it, but it's one of those things that a lot of people struggle telling people what they're trying to do. Hey, I'm going to be raising money, and one of the reasons that I suggest that people come in as LPs first is so they have that experience as an LP, but so they can do the same thing you do, and they can just very organically tell people, hey, well, we invested in this project here, we invested in this project there, and we really enjoy what's going on. You were getting these kinds of returns. And so when it came time for you to raise the capital and work in the investor relations, all those people that came over for the dinner parties that you guys had talked with already knew you were involved with it, already knew you were excited about it. And now when you're sharing an opportunity with them, I mean, of course they're going to jump in. So,
Right,
yeah.
right. And I love how you said sharing the opportunity, because um, we are not asking for money as capital raisers. We are
Mhm.
providing an opportunity.
Yeah.
Just having that shift in the mindset of just telling ourselves what we do is we
Yeah.
are opportunity providers. So that helps. And also having a strong why as to why we are doing this also really helps,
Mhm.
because it grounds you in what you do and why you do it. And the why just radiates. You don't really have to tell people why, they feel
Mhm.
it because it's so strong.
Yeah. Well, since you brought it up and it's a question I always ask, Deepa, what is your why?
Oh Oh, I know. I walked right into it.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it was a
no,
perfect segue, actually. I mean, it's like you have my script in front of you and you're like, I know he's going to ask me about my why, so I'm just going to bring it up.
oh my gosh, again, that was inadvertent. So, so here, my Brian, my why is time freedom. So I got my first why is time freedom, to spend time with my son and my family. And the second why, the whole theme of my career in engineering, just my whole theme of my adult life has been to serve
Mhm,
and be an agent for change, and and just look for the greater good
mhm,
and serve people. And I was telling somebody this yesterday, that I've done well for myself,
mhm,
but I don't want to stop. I'm just starting, because when our needs, like a roof and meaningful work, are satisfied for one single person, that's
mhm.
when we can think about others, just
Yeah.
survival, right? And when I say, when I'm done well for myself, I am happy where I
Mhm,
am. And now I can just think about others and serving the greater good, and solving, being a problem solver and providing solutions and doing what I do. I know how painful it was. I sometimes did not sleep because I had money in the bank. That's just like it's something.
yeah.
It's a good problem to have, but
It's a
it's a
big
problem,
problem. Yeah. I mean,
right?
having money that's not working for you is a problem,
Right,
and I
right,
think a lot of people, um, I think some people are going to be like, oh my goodness, that's a problem. But there's a lot of people who are in the same situation. I think
right.
the crowd you run around with, that the higher income earners, higher net worth people, a lot of them just don't know financial education in the country and maybe the worldwide is just not common, so
Right, right.
yeah.
So I wanted to try and solve that problem by providing good opportunities. That's my otherwise the
Yep.
is the greater good.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, my understanding is you've moved into full time into the multifamily business, right?
Yes, not by choice.
Yeah,
So
tell us how that came about.
so oh my God. See the theme? It's nothing's my choice.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm here
and
by choice.
yeah,
I
you're
love you,
you're you're here
Brian.
by choice, but it's. I remember we met right at. I'll let you tell the story, but
Yes, yes, no.
yeah.
So I was working as head of engineering for company that manufactured utility poles. And I was heading the engineering department. We would design glue laminated wood poles, and we were one of the only two companies that did it. And when the pandemic hit, the lumber market got very unstable, and our suppliers shut doors. I think there was one supplier that was unable to, and we were not competitive either. So the decision was made. It was a business decision. The decision was made to shut down the entire engineering department. And without engineers, they didn't really need a head of engineering.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, last September was my last month of working as a W-2. And since October of 2021, I've been doing this full time.
Yeah. Yeah. So not by choice. And fortunately you were very well positioned to make the pivot, and
Right.
yeah. So I don't know. I'm a fan. I truly believe that, everything happens for a reason. And more than that, I think we get to choose how we react with the opportunities. Some people would, woe is me. And I remember talking to you right when it happened, and you were just like, I'm just going to make the best of it. I'm going to push forward, and multifamily, that's it for me. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. And
So
also, I had some passive income coming in.
mhm,
And what I felt bad about was losing my team. And I love the work. I really did. We designed thousands of structures that carry
mhm,
power, and making this Zoom call happen right now,
mhm,
Um, but what I had so many other job opportunities come my way as soon
Yeah.
as I was laid off, but I didn't want to be. It's a very powerless position to be in.
Mhm.
You know, there's you don't have to go to work tomorrow morning, and that's not your choice. Like
Mhm.
someone can lay you off, and that be it.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to be in that place, and also had um, got introduced to investing in multifamily, so I already had the infrastructure
Mhm.
to lean on that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Speaking of your previous employment, I think you need to come work for the city of Idaho Falls because the internet here is really crappy. If you can help them design a better way to get internet to my house, I mean, think it would just be amazing. So I'm gonna put you on the a write-in ballot for whoever's in charge of that on the city council. But anyway, that said, so what's next for you? What do you have coming up?
what's next for me?
Mhm.
I want to do more of what I've been doing
Mhm.
and create content and try and help because financial literacy, um, in what I have observed, is very lacking, and none of us learn it for some reason. I mean, we're not taught. So financial literacy, just the terms, I want to create content where it be very helpful for
Mhm.
people to um, just analyze deals because we talk about DCSR, we talk about cap rates. Once you are in the world of investing, they become easy. But for
Yeah.
beginners, it's very difficult to understand. And so, yeah, creating content
Mhm.
and just talking to people and enjoying the conversations.
Yeah. Just doing more of what you've been doing and helping more and more people. So,
Right, right. That's the plan.
okay. All right. We're going to shift gears slightly here and bring Kyle on. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on. And um, anyway, super excited to learn a little bit more about you. So do us a favor, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm 24 years old. I was born and raised in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which is the second biggest city in state that doesn't really have big cities.
Right, right.
Um,
I'm in the fourth largest city of a state that doesn't have large cities. So
that's right.
I
Yeah.
know exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're also in Iowa. We're pretty much known for, it's pretty flat. We've got really good dirt.
Yep.
So because of that, everybody just thinks we're corn and soybeans and pigs and whatnot, which is pretty true.
And
Um,
I'm in Idaho, which also has good dirt for potatoes. And incidentally, I don't know if you've ever gotten this, but a lot of people get Idaho and Iowa confused because I guess they both start with the letter I. But
oh yeah.
yeah,
Well,
I
you and
get
I'll
asked a
never
lot.
get
Sir,
that mixed
you're
up.
in Iowa? No, Idaho. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
so yeah, a
Not to be
little
confused.
lot in common there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was raised there, until I was 18. Then in that time, I was part of like I'd say a fairly blue collar family.
Mhm.
My mom was stayed at home. My dad worked as a teacher, and then he also had a detasseling crew. Which, if you don't know what detasseling is, it's basically like physical labor. You go into a cornfield and you kind of walk it up every day and pick the tops off of it. So it's actually a pretty gruesome job. That's kind of a rite of passage in Iowa for 14-year-olds.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's kind of what my childhood looked like, in addition to wrestling too. So that's kind of big in the Midwest, but
Mhm.
I've done that since, or actually through college as well. So I did that, it was a lot of my childhood was detasseling and wrestling, and I don't know, just kind of just doing odd jobs until I got that was all through high school and then into college. I kind of didn't really know what to study. I don't really know if any college student truly knows what they're going to study, but I ended up just going into business.
Mhm.
And yeah, in that time, I started kind of looking into like what kind of industries people like, because it just seems like a lot of people, like we were talking about earlier when Deepa was talking about financial literacy, it just seemed like a lot of people were, they were going to college with the idea that they're just going to immediately, once they get done with it, they're going to have a job, and then all of a sudden, and I've been kind of introduced to this in the last couple of years, it's, oh, hey, we're really just kind of let loose, and we don't necessarily have the information to, go get a home or
Yeah.
pay for your personal finances, be able to manage a budget like that. So I kind of saw that coming down the road, and because of that, I started trying to educate myself, and that's when I started to learn about financial literacy through like books and just people that I know who have been successful in business. So like, for example, a really common thing that people will say is they read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then all of a sudden their life is changed by that financial literacy. So I was kind of one of those guys too. So that was the gateway book to a lot of education. But so then in the past 8 months, I'd say, or so, actually before that, for the last couple of years, I had been fascinated with entrepreneurship, and I decided I wanted to own my own business, but I had no idea what industry or what kind of people I would like to serve, or how I'd like to, help them out. And so in the past 8 months, I was kind of just learning about like, oh, well, it'd be nice to cut down on your expenses. And my girlfriend at the time, who was actually now my business partner, or still girlfriend, but she had come across the idea of house hacking. And so I work at a gym in town, and I had heard that there was one of the members at the gym who was a successful real estate investor, whatever that meant. But I was like, oh, you know what, house hacking, that's kind of the same thing. Maybe I'll ask him about it. So I ended up going into his office that day, and I sat down with the intention of learning about how to basically buy a duplex and then cut down your expenses. And by the time I left that meeting, he had explained multifamily to me, and I was like I walked out to my car, and I was like, I want an apartment now.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of my introduction into commercial multifamily.
I love it.
And since then, it's basically just been fire hose of education, trying to find as much resources and people that know, that are experienced in the industry, and trying to get into that.
There's this cliche that says, your network is your net worth. And I think what you just said there is a perfect example of why it is, because sometimes you talk to people who are ahead of you in one aspect or the other, and they give you an idea that you never would have had on your own. They help you through one of those, mind-blowing or mindset shifts that you need to get to the next step. And I've had several conversations like that where walking into a conversation, I didn't know what I'd walk out with, and just having a much more open mind and clearer view than that. So anyway, you had the presence of mind to at least go ask him about the duplex, and you came out with a lot more. So
Yep, absolutely.
So go ahead.
Oh, I was just, so to this day, I've been keeping in contact with him and trying to pick his brain about stuff. And as I look back on it, some of them were kind of silly questions, but when you're completely green, it really helps to have somebody who's, walked the path before you to ask on.
And you mentioned silly questions, but here's the reality. We all start, in a similar position, and usually for most people, it's naked and screaming when they're born, right? We all start in the life in the same way, but guarantee you at one point, he had the same questions. He had to learn the things you're asking at one point. And I've had to remind myself that a lot when I'm talking to people who are more experienced than me, is just that these guys probably went through the exact same struggles or similar struggles, and they had to learn the same lessons. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm a little less worried about whether my questions are going to sound stupid when I'm talking to people. But anyway, that said, you talked a lot about some of the reasons why you're making this shift. But if you can distill that down, what's your big burning why?
Well, I would say the big why probably stems back from the experiences I've had growing up, and specifically with one of my grandparents. So my grandpa, he was a manufacturer he had a manufacturing company that he had founded with a couple of his buddies a long time ago, like back, I think they had owned it for maybe 20 years. It started in the 70s, ended up selling it in the 90s for a big chunk of money. And then from that point, he had started becoming an investor, somewhat of a serial entrepreneur. And then that was before I was around, and all my relatives and cousins and And then so all the cousins that I grew up with, this whole litter of kids, we were exposed whenever we went to grandma and grandpa's of this totally different lifestyle. Because up to that point, you know, we lived in what I thought was a comfortable household. Like I had no complaints about it, but we'd go to grandma and grandpa's and they were the ones that would take us on the fancy vacations. And we go to their, you know, whatever vacation homes. And it was like, holy cow, this is completely different. And it was just a taste of that different lifestyle that I hadn't
like, Mom, Dad, why don't you have one of these? Yeah.
It's so that was part of it. That was kind of like, that definitely grabs your attention because it's the shiny things. But more so than anything, I would say my why comes from not only just the fun things that wealth will provide you, but rather my grandparents were able to provide my cousins and myself and my sibling with, they basically sat us down when we were 12, like all of us, all growing up. It was our rite of passage was they would sit us down at Thanksgiving, and Grandpa was like, all right, everybody, you're 12 years old. You're an adult now. We're going to teach you about financial literacy. And literally, my grandpa created a program called Invest in Your Future. And what they did was they stopped giving us Christmas presents, and instead they gave us a principal payment that they would say, hey, this is, you know, it could be $1,000 or $2,000 or something. They're like, this is yours. You don't get to spend it, but rather we're going to give this money to you to invest, and we'll teach you how to invest. And every year we're going to come back and we're going to have meetings and we're going to go over, or, you know, have like earnings reports. And it was kind of a fun little thing that we did with, you know, middle schoolers and high schoolers now at this time. But it was a total like mindset shift for a little kid. Like little kids, you know, at the time it was before I'd even had a job. So I was like, why do I, and I know money's important, but I don't even have an income, let alone know how to invest. So that was my introduction to investing. And then that, like, just learning through that process and just learning kind of the basics of just even the stock market just seemed like, oh wow, I'm like light years ahead of my classmates and all my other friends who they're like, what are you talking about? You know, with a brokerage account, like what are all these things? And I was like, oh, you know, the secret to investing is cash flow. Like if you could, like one of the basic things we learned was dollar cost averaging. And I was like, oh man, if I want to be a big time investor, I have to make big time income, like over, you know, consistently. Like, and so that was one of the things that was really attractive to me about multifamily, was the monthly recurring income that you can get, especially if you get an asset that cash flows, to be able to put into that, and then it will sustain itself. So that's kind of the big burning why, and I really enjoyed that. Like, and I would like to be able to not only, you know, kind of replicate what my grandpa did with myself and my cousins, but also be able to do that with my kids and really just anybody who wants to learn, because it's invaluable information.
Yeah, love it. I love it. Thanks for sharing all of that. And it sounds like your grandpa tried to put you guys off on give you a financial education a lot of people don't have. So anyway, that said, you know, we got Deepa on the line. What do you want to ask her?
Yeah, Deepa, thanks again for joining and for letting me pick your brain a little bit. My first question for you, you were talking about you originally got started as an LP, and then on the GP side, you said you were mainly, you played the role of capital raiser. And I was just wondering, what kind of strategies did you use, like right out of the gate for, you said your first deal as a capital raiser, what did you use specifically besides, like, I know you said the dinner parties, but I'll let you go.
Right. But you know, the dinner parties was not part of the strategy though.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that was definitely not part of the strategy. But you know, most of my investors, well, all of my investors at this point, they're either my family, friends, or a referral that came from a friend. So the strategies I would say is just well, in my case, as a limited partner, I would just talk about the returns that I was receiving, and that pretty much. So you want to know about the strategies I deployed as a GP or to grow my investor base?
Well, both.
Well, okay.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? Yeah. So yeah, just talking about what I was doing, where my money was deployed, and how hard it was working, and the cash flow I was getting. Every time equity distribution. And like I said, that was not intentional because I did not know. I thought the sponsors raised capital and that was it. That there was not even another spot for another co-GP to be a capital raiser. And also, just to be a capital raiser is a no-no with SEC. You've got to do something else too on the spot for the sponsorship group. So what I deployed, I would say, is pretty much talking about my experience and what they can expect. So I was piggybacking on the other sponsors' experience. And I would say one thing that helped me close is not talking about myself because I was green too, right? As when my first GP deal was happening, I was not a GP yet. I was trying to be a GP. Is to leverage your partner's experience because we don't have any at that point. Like in your case, Kyle, like you don't have any at this point. So finding a good partner, a sponsor to work with, and then leveraging their experience. And multifamily is a team sport. It's so big and vast that we all have to stay in our lane and help each other out. So yeah, just leveraging your partner's experience, talking about your partner's experience because we don't really have any as the first on our first deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that actually kind of goes perfectly into the next question I had, which was how do you go about finding your team members or your partners or sponsors?
Right. So I would say you'd have to know how to vet a person. And, it's just like conversation that we are having right now is asking questions. And if you'd have to ask about what, tell me about a deal that did not go as well or that's struggling. And you want to see how the person, if the person answers that question, and everybody has a property that struggles. And if they don't have a property that's not struggling, they haven't done this for long enough because there'll always be a property that struggles, even for a month or two, or
Yeah.
even for a little bit of time, there's
Mm-hmm.
always something. So you want to ask about, it's all about vetting deals and vetting. So it's a relationship game. So you want to vet the person first. So ask questions and you also want to ask about, hey, when something went wrong, how did you communicate with your investors? Is there a communication plan? And if something goes south, do you over communicate or you shut down your cell phone? Like which way? So you wanna find out how they deal with adversity,
Yeah.
and just ask questions and vet
Yeah.
people and invest. Start as an LP, and you will have so much insight. Kyle, start as an LP because I learned how to write investor reports just by reading investor reports for my LP holdings. So now I write them.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
start as an LP and ask questions and vet
Yeah.
people.
Gotcha.
And I mean, there's a lot of other, networking groups and places you can go to put yourself around people. And I mean, that's huge as well. And I think you gave us a great example of answering your own question by, going to speak to that gentleman about just the duplex. That's you just need to do a lot more of that. Find people who are in the business and find ways to have conversations and more conversations.
Right. And also to piggyback on that, on Brian's response, Kyle, join Kyle, Brian's Friday TGIF meetup, and
Yes.
has a lot of people, a lot of good people. And
Mhm.
if nothing, you're just increasing your network,
Yeah.
and go to conferences if you have time. Get involved
Mhm.
with your local real estate investment groups.
Yeah. Yeah. That you mentioned the Friday group. I think that's where we first met. Actually, I think we first met at Leica's, in a breakout room from one of Leica's meetups. But
Ah, cool.
yeah, but the networking groups, I mean, just the one that I run, I've had 6 different people come to me and say, hey, I met so and so in your group and we just closed on a property. Thanks for running it. And so groups like that where you have good high quality people, doesn't have to be mine, can be any one of them. Go to those, do as much of those Zoom meetings as you can, and eventually you're going to find people that you want to work with and people who want to work with you.
Nice. Deepa, you were talking a little bit earlier about the advantage of figuring out what you like to do in your free time and how that can actually serve as a strength in your business. And you were talking specifically about creating content, financial literacy
Right.
content. And I was wondering, is that for, like, do you enjoy doing that for like LPs or just for anyone in general, or
Just
tell me
for
about
anyone
that?
in general. So how I bumped into that is I was reading, I'm an avid reader, average like um, about 6 books a month. And I read Hunter Thompson's book.
Mm.
I think it's called Raising Capital. Oh gosh, I might be paraphrasing now, but Google Hunter Thompson, you'll find his book.
It's,
And
yeah. If I hadn't just moved, it'd be within arm's reach of me, but it's still in a box across the room. But anyway.
yeah, so in that book, he talks about creating content and coming up with like 100 different topics and elaborating on them. And I just sat down and he says, sit down for 2 hours and come up with like 100 topics. And I sat down, I had like 150 the first time I sat down. I was like, I would like to know about this. I would like to know more about this. I started putting down on a spreadsheet. And in my free time, I just create content. So I'm a published author too on the engineering side. I write, I've written articles for many trade journals, and I'm a peer reviewer. So I'm a writer and also a reviewer of other researchers' work. So I just deal with a lot of content for fun. And those are all volunteering work. I don't get paid anything for any of that. I just do it for fun. So just by that, I figured out that I like creating content and just consuming content too.
Mhm.
Reading is nothing but consuming content.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how I figured out. And I create content for pretty much anyone that wants to know more. It's
Mhm.
not published anywhere yet, but it's in the works.
Nice. So something you mentioned, creating and consuming. I think I create the best content when I'm consuming good content because it gets me thinking. And so when I read a good book, and I, just reading one of them that I don't know where I put, but when I read a good book or listening to a good podcast, it gets me thinking. And most of the LinkedIn posts that have gotten lots and lots and lots of views are ones that I didn't weren't premeditated. It's like, wow, I just learned something brand new, pull out my phone and just tap it in, hit post. And I think creating content, consuming content in a lot of ways helps you be a better creator of content. But anyway, well, Kyle, we got time for about one more question. So
Perfect,
if you've
because I
been
only got one
saving
more.
one, yeah, if you got that silver
Kyle,
bullet.
okay, I looked up the book. It's called Raising Capital for Real Estate by Hunter Thompson.
That's right. I don't have it with me, but it's at my house right now. It's probably on my kitchen
The blue
table, but
one.
Mhm.
I haven't gotten all the way through it, so I haven't gotten to the content portion
Yeah,
of it. But I gotta say, so far, I've been really enjoying it.
yeah. I've gotten through it 2 or 3 times, so it's a good book.
Nice. Yeah. So Deepa, my last question for you is about a little bit about giving back, and you were talking about this about freeing your time to be able to be an agent of change. And I was just curious, what are the types of people that drive you to give back to them, and like who are they, and then in what ways do you look to help them?
Yeah. So just giving back in as a blanket, giving time, giving attention, being kind. And what I do, the way I give back my time is I go to different schools in Tacoma here and encourage kids to be in the STEM program. And I'm a motivational speaker too. So just giving back my time. I was talking to students, I say kids, students at Tacoma Community College to stay in the program because due to the pandemic, our admission rates were down a little bit.
Mhm.
So we needed the students that are already in the program to stay. So we're just trying to motivate them to stay. So engineering has done a lot for me. So and we need more engineers in this country too. So it's I get both the benefits of getting more engineers into the society by encouraging them. And if I had ever had an opportunity to had somebody come in and say, oh, this is what civil engineers do, I'd have been, oh, that is so cool. And I would have had like a different motivation to be something, you know. So just giving kids that opportunity and going out. And also I'm a young members chair for American Society of Civil Engineers. So I just volunteer on different boards to give back my time and get more kids, I'd say up until high school, to be engineers. So that's where my focus is at this point right now.
Nice. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Perfect. All right. And we're at the time right now where, I gotta come to a close, but, Deepa, Kyle, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Very much appreciate, all that you guys have shared. And one last question for each of you. And Deepa, you get to go first. How can listeners learn more about you?
Oh, great. So I'm active on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
So they can find me at LinkedIn and look for Deepa Akula.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see my full name, which is Deepa Akula.
Mm-hmm.
And my website, it's vinsidecapital.com. The VINSIDE, vinsidecapital.com.
Okay, sounds good. And we'll have a link to your profile and to the website in the show notes. Kyle, same question for you. How can listeners learn more about you?
Yep, very similar. I'm most active on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
That's Kyle Briggs at LinkedIn. And then website-wise, it would find under our business, it's firstascentequity.com. That's FIRSTASCENTEQUITY.
Right. And we'll have that all written down in the show notes for everybody. So if you're interested in connecting with either of these two, just hit the show notes, tap, and that magical internet thing will whisk you away. So that said, once again, thank you very much for coming on the show today. Very much appreciate your time.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you both.
Hey, if you like that episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But more importantly, if you haven't joined our multifamily educational community, the Tribe of Titans, yet, you are missing out. So get yourself 30 days free by clicking the link below in the description, or go to thetribeoftitans.info, and we'll see you there.